Okay. What's the first slide that we're going to see? Is that from you, Sally? Do you have a? Okay. Okay. Awesome.
Yep. Isaac's got it up for me.
Okay.
I think I just spotlighted it for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I see that we are starting to have some folks come in. We're going to start here in just a couple minutes.
Hey.
Okay, I've got us here at 5 o'clock, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the Claire M. Hubbard Sustainability Series. My name is Sally Hopley. I am the Coordinator of Sustainable Practices here at MCC. I am going to welcome you to our event, give you some information on the format for tonight, and then hand it off to our first speaker. First, I have a few appreciations. Thank you to the Claire M. Hubbard Foundation, whose support has allowed MCC to develop a series of sustainability presentations at no charge to the public. Your generosity is much appreciated for this important work. Also, thank you to our MCC IT staff for their work and to our speakers for sharing their knowledge and time. Today's topic is all about the impacts of eating local. Nebraska has over 30,000 acres of land dedicated to vegetable or food production, but the vast majority of these products are sent out of state or used for animal feed or fuel. Much of Nebraska's food system currently relies on out-of-state sources. So eating local can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, support local economies, and improve food securities. So thank you all for being here today to learn about this important topic. Let's see, Isaac, can I please have next slide? This is our schedule for this evening, so we'll do this brief round of introductions. We will have Bill Coe from Green Acres Urban Farm present, and then Wally Graeber from Nebraska Sustainable Agriculture. And then there's some time at the end for a 15-minute Q&A. Next slide, please. So we'll have those two speakers with a Q&A at the end. So for our Zoom setup for today, you have two opportunities to interact. One is the chat. Please use the chat for comments or reflections, but then please use that Q&A button for your questions. So again, we will be looking for your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. And if you are having tech problems, please enter it in the chat as well. So with that, I will go ahead and introduce our first speaker. So William Coe is the CEO and director of Green Acres Urban Farm and Research Project, which was founded in 2009. An educator, entrepreneur, mentor, and lecturer, he is engaged in social and community activism. Coe understands the impact of food insecurity well beyond people not having access to healthy, organic, and nutritious food. He advocates for educating underserved youth in the science of aquaponics and agriculture. Currently, Coe is teaching grades K through 12 how to grow food, aquaponics, nutrition, and cooking. He also superheads the Green Acres Urban Farm and Research Project's community outreach programs and organizes and distributes healthy, fresh, organic leafy greens. Coe has a number of certifications and recognitions. He has been granted the Growing Power Commercial Urban Agriculture Certification, an Aquaponics Masterclass Certification, a Sustainability Certification, Jackson County's Farm Family of the Year, State of Missouri's Trailblazer of the Year in Agricultural Excellence, and recognition by the Missouri Department of Agriculture and Ag Business Development. He is a lifelong learner and is currently studying with the Fort Hays University in agribusiness. Coe's plans for the future are empowered by STEM research and education. These programs reinforce biosecurity, sustainable agriculture, and agribusiness systems. His vision is to create a Bio Pak campus which supports the production and distribution of year-round local organic produce and includes educational facilities. This Bio Pak campus will provide partnering with schools, universities, corporations, and communities. This campus will also create jobs, training, and workforce development, sustainable agriculture, and agribusiness. Bill, thank you so much for being here today, and
Thank you very much.
Hand it off to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sally. And first of all, I'd like to, thank the Hubbard Foundation for a sustainability series for their pioneering work in agriculture and in sustainable resources and bringing information and speakers to the table. I'd like to thank all of our partners in Kansas City, our corporate partners, our volunteers, the people that really put in the hard work, our students and our teachers at East High School, Kansas City Public School District is where we're based out of. Today is a great day, okay? And the reason why I say that is because we are all gathered here, and I understand it's 5:05 p.m. And so let's have big energy. And what I mean by big energy is just that let's shake off the day, if you will. Let's do what it needs to do to shake it off and really kind of enjoy the next hour and a half of learning why it is important for us to eat locally as a community and as a country and as an organization. One of the things that I'd like to do is I'd like to show you the results of our program from the end, and then we'll start with the beginning. How's that sound? So with the help of the IT department, they're going to run a YouTube video, and this is going to be our students giving their voice to the impact that we're making in the community. Ready, IT? Go right ahead. And we should have some volume with that. Can we hear? Okay. There we go. Thank you.
Student voice means a lot in our community, especially since we are like the next gen. We definitely play a role in the future, and having this opportunity for us really benefits us into becoming leaders, leading our community to make better changes, and like having this food insecurity as a big problem for our community. So I think student voice really means a lot.
Not all students have the same opinion, and so if every student gives their opinion and voice on everything, then we could make a change in the world.
So I think adults don't really listen or don't really take us as serious as they should. We see that a lot, especially around here, parents just don't really listen. I think a lot of adults need to give us a chance. There is a lot of potential here. There is a lot of ambition. And I think it just needs to be listened to, but I think it starts with the adults wanting to first. And also, I think we need a lot more students to step up. I know some of them are scared or just don't really care, but if they just saw what we did here, saw how much we cared, I feel like that would push them a little bit more and give them more potential, a little bit more ambition, a little bit more drive to do what needs to be done.
Rethink me because I'm an engineer.
Rethink me because I'm a scholar.
Rethink me because I want to be successful and make change.
Well, thank you, everybody. And that's, we started with that because, you know, at the end of the day, it's about our future and it's about our community. And before I get into my presentation, again, for those who are just joining us, my name is Bill Coe, and this is the Hubbard Sustainability Series, and this is the impacts of eating local. And, you know, we can't really put a price on education, and sometimes we do, and the value of experiences. And I'll give you a little bit of detail to how we started. And we are a registered non-for-profit 501c3 organization, and we facilitate innovative aquaponic technologies, promoting science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, fondly referred to as a STEAM. We were founded in 2009 with Carol Coe, our founder. She had a passion for representing the community from the political side and from the community activism side. Based upon her insight of seeing this food production system, this aquaponic system that we feature, she realized that in urban communities, particularly the community that we're in, where we have one of the largest high schools in Kansas City, that this is in a food desert. And as we get through our presentation, we'll talk a little bit about some of these words that are being thrown around in this conversation called food insecurity. Again, I'll reintroduce myself again. My name is Bill Coe. I am the CEO, director of Green Acres Urban Farm and Research Project. I am the son of Carol Coe. And I do advocate for the underserved youth in the community, particularly in the fields of STEAM, or in science and aquaponics and agriculture. And as we go through the presentation, I'll explain to you why this is so important. This is who we are. These were who our students were in that last video that we saw, that we featured. They were in a 7-month training program. And you can see we've had a range between freshmen and seniors. And some of the seniors were able to speak in that video about their successes with our program and why their voice matters in their community. Here are some more folks that are on our team. We've got Selena, Valentina, and Victor there. And with Go Green, it's important that we understand there's two things in food insecurity that we're dealing with. One is access and affordability. In Green Acres, our mission is to break down those barriers of access through education, training, opportunities, summer camps, workshops, how to cook food, nutritional value. We have a nutritionist that serves with us on our 4-H club program that comes out. And we really get involved in really presenting organic, healthy food in a different light and in an attainable light. And so when students get comfortable with the food, the growing, the mechanisms, how to cook it, the taste, the different flavors, it opens up a great big world for them. Our goals, as I mentioned, are to increase our student.
Bill, sorry, Bill, to interrupt you.
Sure.
Could you please share your slides?
Oh, I'm not sharing it. Oh, my fault. I'm sorry, guys. Here we go. All right, here we go. Thank you so much. We'll share the screen. Thank you. Okay. Share. Thank you very much, Sally. I just.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. We'll go back to the beginning. Would that be okay? And I'll tab through rather quickly if we've already seen it. Okay. Okay. I mentioned that we are 501c3. We're considered a community partner because we work with the school district and presenting this type of technology. As you saw from the film and the video, that was filmed inside our facilities. That was in our aquaponics area. where we feature one of the areas of Kansas City's largest aquaponics systems. And this system that we currently feature is used in 125 countries around the world. So the students are not only getting the training that's going to help them out locally here in Kansas City in the regional areas, but they also could be qualified and trained to work in systems in other countries. And I think that's a powerful opportunity for them to be able to launch into these new green jobs that we're hearing so much about. Out of this class of students that you're seeing, we have produced 2 valedictorians. One person is going on to veterinarian science. Another person is going to marine biology school. And we've got a couple of engineers coming out of here. So I'm very, very proud of the work that these students have done. This has been hands-on, highly interactive type of form of education. And it's rethinking the model of the education is what Green Acres is doing. And here we're highlighting some of our goals. Our goals, as was mentioned in the earlier introduction of myself, is to create and expand Green Acres' alliances with schools, universities, and corporations and communities to create more training, jobs, and workforce development. Our mission is to provide healthy, nutritious, low-cost organic food while educating students in urban deserts as well as providing local jobs. We were able to do that this year. We'd love to do more of that. You're seeing some of the opportunities that we have in this slide where we reach out to community organizations. We even did a, take your child to work day, and we were able to present on site. But Green Acres primarily produces leafy greens, fish, microgreens, prawns, herbs, and microgreens from around the world. Okay, when we get into the what is food insecurity? Because a lot of people may not have a clear definition on that. Our students were tasked with understanding what food insecurity is and also what food deserts are, and then how can Green Acres or our club or our organization combat against food insecurity? What are the ways, what are the strategies and the solutions? So in here, we looked at the history, we looked at the challenges, and we looked at the solutions. And what we came up was just a unique approach to bringing all of this together and supporting the community. During the pandemic, these students worked diligently, might I say, to understand the importance of food and nutrition in our diet. And if you really, not to get too deep into what COVID is about, but basically it's a disease which breaks down the immune system. And so the immune system is the body's defense. And if the immune system is compromised, then the body tends to be much weaker and vulnerable to diseases such as COVID and such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and just a variety of doors, unfortunately, open through compromised nutrition. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is explain why is it important to eat healthy food. And here on this slide, this is our campus here. This is our awards recognition. These are 2 students that are in our 4-H club. They're our officers, and they've been a part of our program for about 4 years. And so what we've grown to see is the development in training, education, and then these young ladies have become instructors in our program to help guide and mentor other students in our community. Okay. Our key terms that we use, technology and aquaculture, is aquaponics. Aquaponics has basically been around since the Mayan culture. It's a resilient farming system that provides wellness and better nutrition. It's a form of agriculture that combines raising fish in the tanks, which you saw the students reaching into the blue tanks on the video, and it's a soilless plant culture. Now, when we look at the different techniques of aquaculture or aquaponics, you'll see, from different lens points. You'll be able to see from the rural farmers in the field, and you'll be able to see what we do in year-round organic operation, where we grow whether the weather's good or bad, because it's inside. And so there are some advantages there. We also do grow in the soil too, because here again, we're in a food desert. So anything we can utilize as a growing medium or an opportunity, we're certainly going to take advantage of it. These are some of the awards that we won over the past couple of years. Kaufman Leland Fellows, Missouri Department of Agriculture, Trailblazer of the Year, Jackson County Award, and there's several others that we've mentioned earlier. So the point, the eating local has so many benefits. And if you just set the health benefits aside and said, okay, we're not going to talk about that, we can talk about the connection to community. Each of the students that were in our program were connected to the community. We raised and grew food for 3 different pantries in our community in the height of COVID. And what we were understanding was that the demand of healthy organic food surged. Why? Because schools were closed. So that eliminated a lot of the opportunities for students to get healthy, nutritious food, either breakfasts or lunches. And so therefore we were looked like, well, how can we fill the gap? What can we do as Green Acres as an organization to highlight the importance of what we're doing in agriculture here in our city? Okay. These students and all these students, whether you're in Omaha, Nebraska, or wherever you are all across the country, and particularly if you're watching this, your voice does matter in your community. Your time, your resources, everything that you can give back is important. It's important, like the young lady stated, that students step up and be a part of the community. Instead of complaining about what's wrong, let's go out here and fix it. Let's problem solve. Let's look at ways that you can partner with an organization. You can volunteer a couple of hours. You can plant food. You can understand how you can take care of your community better and others in your community. I'd like to thank everybody for going through the presentation with me. These are a series of volunteers here in our facility. I think I'm that guy with the hand up there in the back saying thank you. Okay, so with that in mind, I want to be conscious of our time, and I just wanted to say, you know, I'd like to thank everybody. It's a really, really great opportunity to learn about what we do. We appreciate being on this platform, and we'll open up the floor for any questions or opportunities or that you'd like to ask me and the others. Okay, thank you,
Bill,
guys.
Thank you. Bill, we'll actually, if you all could please save questions to the end, we'll.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. All righty. And if you're looking for us, guys, we're at gogreenacreskc.org. I'll put the information in the chat. And I welcome my colleague, Wally Graeber. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
So our next speaker is Wally Graeber. Graeber is active in the Nebraska food system with the Lincoln-based Southern Heights Food Forest, Open Harvest Co-op Grocery, and statewide with the Nebraska Sustainable Agriculture Society. Graeber is trained as a landscape architect and enjoys creating meaningful educational spaces for kids and their families to learn about the plants they eat. Graeber sees our food systems through the lens of a series of interconnected watersheds and regional foodways. Originally from Wisconsin, his favorite meal is a seasonally sourced Friday night fish fry enjoyed with friends. He is inspired by seeking to understand the relationships of soil health and vegetable cropping systems to the health of humans, the art and science of cheese making, and the joy of eating spicy radish microgreens. Wally, thank you for being here today. And I will hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sally. And thanks, Bill, for your presentation. It was really neat to hear about your work down in Kansas City. And as someone that's a fan of growing aquaponically, it's really cool to hear about your work, and I'm excited to come visit sometime.
Absolutely.
I'm going to start off my presentation. I'm going to share my slides here with sound. Bear with me while I get it up and going. And present. And hide the panel. All right. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here today. It's really exciting to have this opportunity to talk about my work in community food systems and the impacts of eating local. For me, that is an important thing. It's my connection to community. It's how I kind of, create relationships. And I hope that today we'll have some participation with one another. If you have a pen and paper handy, I would ask you to go grab it. There's going to be some moments of reflection throughout my presentation if you want to have that ready. So generally, I do believe that together we can cultivate strong community relationships through our community food system. So today I am generally representing the Nebraska Sustainable Ag Society. We're a network of producers around the state, as well as eaters. The mission of NSAS is to promote agriculture and food systems that build healthy land, healthy people, healthy communities, and generally have a healthier quality of life for both present and future generations. NSAS's historic work has looked at offering mentor opportunities for beginning and also experienced farmers, so pairing the two together, and for on-farm research, demonstrations, and education. So a little about myself that Sally mentioned. I do have a Bachelor's of Science of Landscape Architecture from UW-Madison in Wisconsin. I'm a couple years out of that degree, and it's cool to be putting some of those design skills to work in my local food system. Currently, I am the board chair at Open Harvest Co-op Grocery. I'm board secretary at Southern Heights Food Forest, both here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I serve in a leadership role with the Slow Food Youth Network in the US, and I just became the program coordinator for NSAS. So I do want to recognize my identity. I'm 31, I'm straight, I'm white, and I'm male, which gives me a lot of privilege in these spaces. So I'm hoping today in my presentation, I can give you some of the people that I look up to that might not look like me, and I hope to inspire you to do the same when you're looking at your community, to look towards people and celebrate diversity. Real quick, I wanted to read you a quote, kind of a semi-land acknowledgement. We all live on land that has been colonized here in the United States, and this quote is from Luther Standing Bear. The old people came literally to love the soil, and they sat or reclined on the ground with a feeling of being close to a mothering power. It was good for the skin to touch the earth, and the old people liked to remove their moccasins and walk with bare feet on the sacred earth. Their teepees were built upon the earth, and their altars were made of earth. The birds that flew into the air came to rest upon the earth, and it was the final abiding place of all things that lived and grew. The soil was soothing, strengthening, cleansing, and healing. And Luther Standing Bear was from the Ogallala Lakota tribe. As I work in my local community, I try to find people. Communities are composed of individuals, and really try to find the connections and the relationships between everyone in a local food system. So this is a graphic from an Ohio Food Policy Council. No matter where you're coming from listening to the presentation, there's likely a local or state food policy council that you could interact with. And they try to work on how each of these pieces of the puzzle work together. And the stronger they are, hopefully the more resilient and healthy the community is. So as I go through the presentation today, I'll be kind of looking at different segments of this community-based food system. And some of the relationships in here are that there are strong between both breeders, farmers, cooks, and eaters. In reference to a breeder, it's the person that actually chooses the characteristics of the plants we find on our table. So the relationship between each of these four different food system actors isn't always, direct. I don't know the last time I talked to a breeder, but as a part-time farm worker myself, I often talk to cooks and I talk to eaters both at farmers markets and in restaurants. So I think, generally to have a strong community-based food system, we're trying to create conversations and discussion like we are here today about what people's needs are, what they're struggling with, what they want to celebrate, and what's meaningful to them. Another quality of a community-based food system is a focus on equity, access, sovereignty, and diversity. As Bill mentioned, making sure that someone is secure in their food, you have to be also looking at, is it accessible and is it culturally relevant to someone? These are some of the topics and the qualities of a community-based food system that I think are important to remember as we're doing this work together. So also another quality is that the contributions throughout are celebrated, both in the field, the forest, the table, the school cafeteria, as Bill's work focuses on, the backyard, the park system. So just trying to think of ways that, where in your community do plants, do food, do animals interact, and how does that affect your access to a quality life in your community? I also believe that there is cooperation amongst the people to share, care, and grow together. As a cooperator myself with our local food co-op, I think the tenets of of a cooperative, whether it's in a local system or it's a national system, I think it's important to work towards those value systems. And another one that I think is important is food is seen as a human right. I think we often think it's for pleasure or if it's just something to give us energy. But if we start to see it as a human right, I think it has the potential to be a much more valuable thing to the entire community. So last but not least, a quality of a community-based food system is that food workers, land, animals, water, air are all equal members of the collective in the community and have an active role to play. So seeing both water and air just as important as the person or the land, I think is important as we have these discussions. So kind of like Bill went through, what are the real impacts that eating locally can have? One is that it allows families to follow a diet, which is often more economical, buying at the moment of bounty. So currently, we're in mid-June, third week of June, and today in the field, I was both planting lettuce and harvesting lettuce. I was harvesting carrots and planting a next round of beets. Just really when something is in season, it both tastes great and it's also in excess, so things are more affordable. Another effect of a community-based food system and eating locally is that it supports the local economy by investing community dollars back into local resources. Often I've seen studies that show it circulates 3 to 7 times if spent within organizations that are owned locally versus being spent with organizations that are that do not have local ownership. Another piece, and we're going to have 9 here total, so I appreciate you going through this with me. The third I want to mention next is both the waste and the distance. So it reduces the overall environmental impact because it typically reduces packaging, greenhouse gas emissions, carbon that is released in the atmosphere. Typically in this part of the country in the Midwest, and I think most places, our food travels about 1,500 miles to get where we are. So it's not as fresh, it's not as, it has a much higher carbon footprint to get to us, and among other things. So I am going to launch a poll, and if you can bear with me as I do this, I'm going to go to the poll and see if I can do a drop down. So I'm going to launch for you here. If you're on a mobile device, don't worry. You should be able to scroll back to the screen. So I'm going to launch this first one. And if it's a couple in a row, feel free to do multiple, but it's just kind of a survey of where you are, where you want to be in your eating habits. And it's kind of just to get a pulse of where we can be investing our energy in our community and local food system. So I'll take a few minutes and I'll give you a moment to do that. So there's about 15 of us here. So when we get about 10 results in, I'll shut down the poll and I will share the results. And for anyone that's listening to this recording later, where do we want to be in 3 months for your household and as far as eating locally? Option 1 is to have at least 1 local ingredient on each day. Option 2 is to have 1 local ingredient in each meal. Option 3 would be to have at least 20% of what we eat locally, or have it prepared locally. Option 4 would be to, at least during the growing season or the worm season, have at least half of what we're eating to be local. And these are all levels that we are striving for. It doesn't mean that's what we're doing today. The second question is based on convenience. Where do you want to be purchasing local food or prepared foods? Whether it's at your local grocery store or cooperative grocery, at your neighborhood farmers market, at a year-round farmers market. Not everyone has those, but that would be something cool to create if you don't have one in your community currently. Direct from the farmer while visiting their farm, or maybe it's out of convenience delivered to your doorstep, and the distributor might not matter, but just having it brought to your front door. The third question is, how much of your food budget would you like to spend on food that is locally produced or prepared? After this conversation, options go between 0, 1 to 5, 6 to 10%, 11 to 20, 21 to 40, and 75 and above. Just as a tidbit to share, most places in the United States only eat about 1 to 5% of their diet is sourced locally. And there's many factors that go into that, but a lot of, about 90 to 95% of our food is imported from a non-local region. Fourth question, last but not least, is what are 3 ways you would like to commit to eating locally? First option is attending a farmer's market regularly for your family schedule, joining or investing in a local farms community supported ag subscription for the season. Another option is eating locally at restaurants, hospitals, food trucks, catering companies that source from local producers as your budget allows. Another option is growing your favorite food in your own backyard, a community garden, or working for a local farm. And the other option that I put out there was supporting school gardens or lunchrooms by volunteering to care for crops, co-teach lessons, or coordinate local ingredient purchasing. And if you had something other, you're more than welcome to throw it in the chat. So I'll give everybody a couple, maybe 30 more seconds here. We have about 8 out of the 9 now, out of the 15 people that in the session that have voted so far. So I appreciate everyone's just kind of going through this exercise and saying, it's not where I'm at right now, but where do I want to be? I think dreaming a little bit is important in some of this work, and really working towards what we can do together if we put our minds and our hearts into it. So I'll end the poll and I will share the results to everybody here. So it looks generally, where does everybody want to be in 3 months? They want to have at least 20% of their diet sourced locally. That's great. The other one is, at least during the warm season, having 50% of what's grown locally or prepared locally in their diet. I think those are great goals, and I would love to find ways to support you in doing that. Those are ones I probably strive for myself. We did have 2 votes for choose your own adventure, anything in between, depending on the season or the day. I like that too. The second result was by far the most common was shopping at your local farmer's market. I think farmer's markets are great. You can connect with your farmer directly for a few hours on the weekend or midweek. And it also looks like people are interested in shopping at a year-round farmer's market. So I'd love to hear more about that sometime from folks too. The third question result looks to be people would like to spend most of their food budget between 20 and 40%. There's a couple that wanted to go above and beyond and try 75% or more. Again, that's a great goal to have, and striving for it is important. The last result looks like we're split a few ways, but the popular 3 ways that you will commit to eating locally will be growing your own food in your backyard, a community garden, or working at a local farm, and also attending farmers markets. Thank you all for going through that exercise. I really appreciate it. And hopefully there'll be some more moments of reflection throughout the rest of the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing the results and go back to my presentation. And there'll be a few slides where poll questions come up, and I'll just jump over those. So thanks for bearing with me. So the next three topics that I wanted to hit are both nutrition and flavor. So if you're eating locally, it's helping provide a greater source of vitamins and nutrients because of the shorter time between harvest to your plate. So you're able to pick something at peak ripeness. Someone reminded me recently that color is, really connected to nutrition, and flavor is also connected to the vitamins in the food itself. So if it's looking and tasting good, those things are likely connected. The second one here is conservation. It benefits the environment by preserving both farmland and green space within communities. So I think, when most of people are, over 50% of people are now living in cities, when we go to work on development that turns farmland into housing, doing that in a smart way and looking at the soil quality and looking at, access to urban markets, I think is an important piece in development. And the last one here, before we go on, is knowledge. So it helps promote local growers, which allows the eater to inquire about farming and processing techniques. A lot of people talked and responded that they really like going to farmers markets. That's a place you can ask questions, you can talk about recipes, you can ask about practices. I think those are, part of being a conscious eater and someone that is well educated is to gain that knowledge through your grower and do your own research and come back to the grower and have a more interesting and engaging conversation. So the last three I want to bring up is really what Bill touched on is food security. So it makes local fresh food available to communities with limited access to healthy, culturally relevant, and accessible ingredients. Here, I think it's really important to touch on if we're supporting a local food economy well, the farms in our area that are growing the food seasonally are well supported, both through grants and community-supported agriculture subscriptions, wholesale markets, cooperatives. I think there's many methods to create a diversity of different growers in our area. Another thing, an effect, is that it helps create safety. So it creates a safer food supply by growing mass production, by avoiding mass production and decreasing the chance of large-scale contamination. So if there's a breakout of something, it's likely in a much smaller zone and you're able to pinpoint it a lot easier. And, thread throughout this conversation are the relationships. So it supports a connection between the producer and the eater, and therefore, hopefully, promotes a healthy, trusting community. So we did answer this poll question, but I do want to throw a video out there that was produced about 5 years ago through our local food co-op here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'll press play. I believe I shared it correctly and the audio should work and everything. So enjoy it. It's about 3 minutes long, so sit back and take a break.
There's a new way to live. It had been the way for many years, but we've lost something. A family dedicates themselves to growing. A dedication to tending the earth and an attention to detail for one reason: to feed their community. There was a time when you could eat dinner knowing it was grown just a few miles away by people who care, your neighbors. It always seemed to taste better because it tasted like home. At Open Harvest, where food comes from and how it's produced is important to us. When you walk through our doors, you'll find safe, healthy food that came directly from one of 100 farmers and producers we buy from, delivered straight from the farm to you. There are no middlemen, creating a better price for you and the farmer. Because when it comes to health, there's nothing more important than family and your neighbor's family. started in 1975 with a shared vision of this old way. The idea to bring local, fresh, organically grown food directly to our neighbors. Today, the Open Harvest family has grown to thousands of member owners who all share that same vision. Food sustains us, and how it's grown affects our environment. That's why we only sell products with where and how in mind. It's why we support local farms to help our community prosper and to provide a great place to work and shop. Your family is the future. The very foundation of our existence depends on how we take care of our land and each other. A group of people investing just a few resources each, and a family caring for the land which we all share, can accomplish enormous things. A new way to live. Open Harvest. We're not following a trend. We started it.
So thank you for viewing that and kind of getting a sense of the values that I share in my community, and why I am proud to be a member of a local food co-op down in Kansas City. There's the Merc, and that's someone that I think Open Harvest looks up to often. And some of the images, most of the images in that video of the farm photography was the current farm that I work on as well. So 3 local actions we all can take today to push beyond the current, whatever it may be, between 1 and 10% that we have on average for our communities. The 3 that I wanted to really highlight are both investing locally, volunteering locally, and growing locally. So investing part of your income in local sustainable farms. A group that I've recently been more interested and connected to is the Slow Money Institute. And they do 0% loans to local small scale farmers. Also considering ways to support and help maybe grant write and or offer in-kind matches for federal grants. You could become a member owner of your local grocery co-op, or if you don't have one in your community, look into starting one. I think it's a great model to make sure all voices are heard within a community around your food system. Second one is volunteering. So not just visit for a tour at a local farm, as important as that is, but ask what is needed, see how you can dig in, metaphorically or literally, and just create that connection. There are many great farmers in and around cities and around this country that I think if we all stepped up in little ways, it would make their lives a lot easier and a lot more effective in bringing health and nutrition to our communities. The second way under volunteering is donating. So whether it's time or money to food security initiatives like Bill's down in Kansas City, or programs that train the trainer. So, training people that can go teach in schools, teaching kids the benefits and the important aspects of growing your own food, and what healthy cooking looks like. Looking at more ways to promote your local farmer, and also ways to donate towards incentivizing healthy soil practices. So the soil, I think, in my belief of a community, is very closely connected to the health of people. If what's in the soil is clean and biodiverse, I think that same nutrition and diversity ends up in our guts and really affects people individually. And the third way is to grow locally. So you could join or support your local community garden organizations. You could plant seeds in your own backyard that are both edible and native. And you could volunteer and grow local in your school gardens. You could teach lessons. So kind of looking at that wheel from early on about looking at community supported and community focused food systems. These are 3 organizations that I look up to here in Nebraska. The first one is Buy Fresh, Buy Local Nebraska. They are a member organization of farms around the state. They have a great online food guide. The second one is Regenerate Nebraska. They are also a group of growers, cooks, breeders, chefs, and eaters that are all doing great things around the state. And the third one is run through the university system, so the Nebraska Regional Food System Initiative. They have an annual conference and summit, usually in January or February each year. Always great to have new voices to hear from there if you ever want to attend. And here I think I just wanted to give, if you have that pen and paper handy, to kind of write down 3 community food system orgs that inspire you. If you're local, or if you're local to Lincoln, Nebraska, you might recognize these, or Eastern Nebraska generally. So Community Crops is one that I'm very inspired by. They support a network of both refugee farmers. Some are Yazidi from the Iraq area, now living and resettled in Lincoln, Nebraska. Another food system organization that I look up to is Ho-Chuk Farms, and they're a group of Native American farmers on the Winnebago Reservation here in Nebraska. And then in Omaha, we have Global Roots, and they help bring land access to many farmers from the Pacific Island area that have resettled here in Omaha. So again, if you have that pen and paper handy, take a moment to write down, 3 organizations that you are inspired by or want to learn more from. And, I challenge you the next couple of months, maybe 3 months over the summer or whatever time you're viewing this, to reach out to them, see what their work is like, give them a call, help plant some seeds. I think there's many ways we can all engage with these important food system organizations. So these are 3 that I personally work with. One is the Southern Heights Food Forest, as Sally mentioned. It was started back in 2013 here in Lincoln. Another is Open Harvest, who you just viewed that video from. We've been around since 1975. And just this year, I started working with Shadowbrook Farm and Dutch Grill Creamery. I'm a farm assistant, learning all the good ways of distributing, cleaning, and caring for the food that we grow. I also want to share direct people that I'm inspired by, not only locally, but around the country. So as Bill mentioned, he's certified by Growing Power, who was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for years, and the head of Growing Power Madison was Robert Pierce. Robert's an active farmer on the south side of Madison. He's a hero of mine. He's persistent, he's funny, he's kind, he's generous, and someone that I really look up to as a skilled farmer and someone that brings food security to his community. The second person I wanted to mention is Monica White. She's a professor at UW-Madison now, but she did a lot of food security work in Detroit, Michigan. She's recently just published a book called Freedom Farmers that look at agricultural cooperatives in the South. And the third person I wanted to mention is LaDonna Redmond. She works with Seward Co-op up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Her work really focuses these days on diversity, equity, inclusion, and not only a hero of mine, but a mentor and someone that I look to when trying to increase the food security for everyone in my community, and the ways to do that are both action-oriented and impactful. So if you have that pen and paper handy, I'll encourage you to look and write down 3 more people that you look up to, and maybe just reach out to them in the next couple of weeks. Say, hey, how you doing? I was thinking about you. I heard this great, or this online local eating and presentation, and I was wanting to reach out and find ways I can support you better. Had to give Bill a shout out here. He's someone that I've looked up to and gotten to know recently. These photos are out of order. Karen's in the middle, Bill's on top. Bill's down in Kansas City. Karen Washington is someone out in New York. She's been doing this work for decades. And it's someone that, if given the opportunity, I would love to learn more from. So even though I might not have a relationship currently with these folks in a deep way, I'm excited to maybe reach out to them, even though they're far away. They're still part of a localized food system that's feeding their community. And Tommy Joshua, I just recently learned about. He's out in Philly, and he's working with community gardens and access to land in Philadelphia. So things I'm reading right now, if anyone's interested, partway through all these books. Building Community Food Webs came out this spring from Ken Meter. He's been also doing this work for decades out of Minnesota. He's kind of someone that's helped make these connections between the food policy sector and the food policy councils. And his book is beautifully written, very down to earth. Can't recommend it enough. I recently had the privilege to talk to Mark Bittman about his new book, Animal Vegetable Junk, also came out this year. Kind of dives into the history of what our food system looks like. Some of it's junk, some of it's healthy, and sometimes it's hard to figure out what's in between. So I think that book really helps for anyone looking to dive deeper into how we got where we are today. I think Mark's book is really great for that. And then another shout out back to Monica at Freedom Farmers. Listen to the audiobook. It's about 4 hours long. It really looks at the heroes like W.E.B. Du Bois and Fannie Lou Hamer, how they supported their communities out of necessity in the South during and after slavery ended. So here was a question that we talked about earlier. I'll skip over that. And so community actions, ways to increase both our food security, relationships, and healthy eating. These are just, words that I put together that really are meaningful to me. On your pen and paper, start to think of ways that you might engage, whether you're doing it now or again, dreaming of ways you want to. So whether you volunteer, you invest, or you practice, just building that skill set, sharing your love, and conserving, being curious and staying connected to your local community through food. You can cook, you can save seeds, you can preserve. So when something's not seasonal, you can eat it later on in the winter. And you can plant, you can grow, you can cultivate, and you can dig. So some of the work that NSAS is going to be doing this year is we're going to have a series of farm tours around the state. We're hoping to publish them virtually later on, but we're going to be setting up with Mike and Michelle at Benson Bounty in Omaha. They have an urban farm. They're great people. They do amazing things in the city. They have a hoop house that they grow almost year round with. Actually, I bet they do have something growing there all the time with how creative they are. Our second tour will be out in the Sandhills of Nebraska with Karen and Marty out at Straight Arrow Bison Ranch. They raise a herd of buffalo or bison, and it's really amazing to see how they treat their animals and their land on a rotational grass-based system. And they do all their processing on site, so the animals never have to go anywhere, and the stress is much reduced. And the third one, kind of way out towards Colorado, for anyone on the eastern side of Nebraska, it's worth the trip. Beth and Nathan out at Meadowlark Hearth are going to be hosting folks on September 5th for their 9th annual seed festival. So they produce and grow seeds that are of this area and do super well in the soil of our bioregion. Other things coming up to keep an eye on after today's Hubbard Sustainability Series are the farm tours I just mentioned. There is going to be a local food challenge between September 1st and 21st. So kind of challenging people in our community and one another to increase what we're eating from our local producers. Can we eat 21% in 2021? Can we do it for 21 days? And just try little steps along the way. Again, the Seed Festival out with Meadowlark Hearth on September 5th. And then if you want to take a trip down to Salina, Kansas, I would highly recommend the Land Institute's Prairie Festival. That's been happening for decades. It's an amazing time. It's back on after COVID. And it's really just a great gathering at a place that's working on perennial agriculture. So wanted to thank the whole team at Metropolitan Community College. Again, my name is Wally. I'm the program coordinator at NSAS, Nebraska Sustainable Ag Society. You're welcome to reach out anytime over email or jump on our website. And we do offer membership opportunities for the development and skills and access to land for beginning and experienced farmers. So it's been really great to present with everybody here today, and I appreciate people wanting to do just little bits more in their local food system. So thanks so much.
Great, thank you, Wally. Real quick before we dive in, where can folks find more information about those food or the farm tours that you mentioned?
Yeah, that's going to be published probably here in the next couple of weeks. We're just getting the last details together. It'll be on the sustainablenebraska.org website. So,
okay, great.
Yeah.
I know you had a lot of resources in your presentation. I tried to drop most of them in the chat for those folks who are interested. So again, I do see that we have a few questions in the Q&A, so we'll get into those now. But if anyone has questions, please drop those in the Q&A. We'll be keeping an eye on those. So first, this one should hopefully be pretty easy. Bill, this is for both you and Wally. But what's your favorite fruit or vegetable to grow and why?
Oh, okay. My favorite fruit, my favorite food to grow, I have a lot, so I'm just giving my top two. I really, really like the way our kale is grown in our aquaponic system. And I love our microgreens. And back to what Wally was saying, yeah, our soil is very, very important. And so, that's the foundation for us, is working on our soil. But when we're working in water, it's different. It's the same type of attention to detail to soil that you have in water. So my favorite two would be kale and our butter crunch lettuces. They're just absolutely fabulous.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm excited
Wally?
to try them. Excited to
Okay.
try them sometime.
And then, then we grow mushrooms too. So, we can just make a salad and call that all good. Okay.
Totally. Seasonally, right now we have really, really tasty carrots coming out of the ground. Whether they're purple on the outside, yellow on the inside, or orange on the outside, purple on the inside, there's really cool varieties out there that you can get creative with. I'm not usually a huge carrot fan, and so during the harvest that's been happening, I'm like, well, maybe I don't dislike them anymore. I just like them when they're fresh and when they're getting pulled out of the ground like immediately, so I've worked with kids in the past and they're all like, I don't like carrots. I'm like, well, how have you had them? And really it's like, you haven't found a way yet that you like them, and kind of challenging them to be curious, keep trying new things. And I think that's usually the direction I go in those conversations.
Great, thank you. This next question is also for either of you. Do you find many people wanting to get into farming food who have been unable to because of land costs or other hurdles?
Wally, if you let me take this one, let me start this one off. In Jackson County, and it's in our slide, and I overlooked the statistic, and this was pre-COVID. There are close to about 340,000 families that we would call close to food insecure. I find people that want to get into it are really just trying to find something better that's working for them other than the system. Because obviously our food systems are broken. And so what I'm finding is that people are now reaching out and becoming aware of, well, what can I do? Kind of like Wally with the action steps. What are the 3 things that I can do to participate? And I encourage people, you don't have to be a super green thumb person. Just take it one step at a time. We're a research project. So when something doesn't work, like a particular crop or something like that, we go back to the drawing board and we start again. And that's why I want to encourage everybody. You don't have to start off as the best grower in Kansas City. Just start where you are and then access that information like Wally talked about. Either farmers like myself or other organizations. There's just so much out there that if you wanted to plug in, I think you can do it now.
That's great, Bill. I'll refer to actually a conversation I had, or a discussion on 2 days ago on Tuesday with John Boyd Jr. with the National Black Farmers Association.
Okay.
Him and his wife Kara came to Omaha.
Yes. Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah, and they kind of just said, to be a farmer, what do you need for the USDA to qualify for a lot of the programs? And it's really, you need I think the phrasing was, you need to have the potential to have access to land. It's not always that you have to, be owning it. You could be managing it, and you could still be a farmer. But they did mention the key to a lot of that is actually having the ability to own it. The key to a lot of programs and support is working towards paying that back. So I think in Diane's question, land costs around the Omaha area are, I think it was mentioned, about $12,500 per acre. And the comment back was, you'd have to be growing something probably illegal to making that cost back right now. Vegetable farming, rotational grazing doesn't really cut it in the near term to pay the interest and to pay the capital just from scratch. So I think really some of the hurdles are people trying to go at this alone. I'm still a deep believer of doing things cooperatively or finding relationships where you don't have to be the only one taking on the debt or taking on the qualification for some of these programs. So again, a community effort, I think, reduces some of that. And for a lot of folks that are farming, it's inherited land, and there's nothing wrong with it. But that really narrows down the access to property. And I'm not in that boat. I don't know many people that are inheriting land, but there are avenues where people can put that land in a trust, and they can make sure it stays in conservation or a certain land. I think creative programs like that are things that more people need to explore and more need to support.
Yeah, and also to add to that, Wally, one of the things we're doing in the inner city, one of the things Green Acres is doing actually as of Saturday morning, we're doing a workshop for the Foxtown East Neighborhood Association. And in our inner city, what we have is vacant lots that have been abandoned. And so what we're working with this organization to is identifying different growing methods and opportunities that would flourish in a limited urban environment. And so for those of you that are not familiar with what urban farming is, basically it's farming on restricted or limited spaces, or a creative way of growing things in a limited environment, if that would suit for definition today. But it's the neighborhood. So I would encourage folks to get involved in your neighborhood association. So like you said, everybody can join you on the journey. And it's a cooperative journey too, because all of us are working towards this. We're not competition.
Yeah, and even there's a couple 100 miles between our metro areas. It's not that far when you think of it. There could be things that we're even doing here that we could be sharing, whether it's access to a distribution system or whatnot. We could be selling to each other's markets, even in this distance that we share right now.
Yeah, and Wally, can I share this one question? We have Feeding America says there's 813,000 people struggling with hunger, and that's just in Jackson County, in our county, and we have 209,000 are children. So, guys, we can do better. We can get this. We really can get better at delivering a better quality food system to our communities, both rural and urban. There's just no way that we should not be able to be focused on this with the technology that we have, and so that's why we need to come together, as a community.
Great, thank you both. I'm going to divert us just a little bit. We have a few more questions rolling in. How have you seen COVID exposing the vulnerability of food sustainability or food systems?
I think something that came up here in Nebraska, maybe in April of last year, I was at the time working for a local food distributor, and most of our lettuce, most of our greens, like the kale and the micros that Bill talked about, come from the Salinas Valley in Central California. And, there was a week the truck didn't arrive. So we got calls from kind of the big box grocery stores, and they said, "Do you have any greens for us?" I said, "Well, if we would have planted them 5 weeks ago, we would." It's not a turnkey option. You can't say, oh yeah, here you go. We had to just waiting and ready for you. It's like, no, we need to work on this in a way that plans a couple weeks out in advance, and we'd be happy to supply it, maybe even at the price that they're being shipped in from California, and saving on that trucking cost. But I would say, when things don't show up, whether it's toilet paper or salad greens, and people can't find it on the grocery shelf, they ask themselves, well, why is it? I think we need to have more people asking why, and not just saying, oh, it's gone, I have to hoard it. And it's like, no, you don't. There is enough available. It's just the system of shipping broke down when we have a global pandemic. And most grocery stores only have 3 days of food on their shelves. So if a truck doesn't come for 3 days because of whatever part of the link got hit, they start to run out of things, and you notice. So the pandemic, I think, at least showed people that can happen. And if we don't start to relocalize our food system, it will continue to, whether or not we like it, with global climate change.
Yeah, I would agree with you, to the point to where we had in the inner city, I mean, in our program, and those students that you saw, we had 2 out of 3 of our students contract COVID at the same time that they were going through our program. We had a couple students lose a relative and a family member during the time of their training program during COVID. I mean, this is their guardian. So the stories that we have and that these students have been through have been, it's been a journey. It's been a painful journey. And upon graduation, I had the opportunity to sit across with a young man who finished our program who lost his guardian. And I just looked at him, and, he achieved his degree. He's going to Florida to be a marine biologist. And I'm sitting here looking at it like, man, we made it. We made it through probably, arguably, the toughest year that you probably, I mean, this is high school students dealing with real world situations and life situations as far as food and food insecurity. And we have to do something, and our Green Acres is committed to that. That's our mission. We've been founded since 2009. We are working diligently to redesign even our own infrastructure to figure out how we can produce more efficiently and distribute more to our communities. Kids with allergies who can't go to the pantries, we grow food for them. Faith homeless daycare, we grew food for them. We grew food for our own students in our own student body in our pantry. So these are all the different things that I'm saying that the students and the community, we really need to, like you're saying, Wally, is just take some steps forward to do something different that's going to impact our future in our food production. And they're not giant steps, to be quite honest with you. There's just one baby step at a time, getting involved or reaching out to this organization. I'm also on the board of Slow Food Kansas City. I didn't know you were on the board of the Nationals, Wally. Yeah, right. So, I mean, but we are committed to our cause, but I think we're also committed to getting everybody else involved on the team, and at whatever level you come in, to recognize this problem in our country.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, we have one question that's specifically for you. Are you working with a specific school in Kansas City, or do you work in any school that wants to learn about aquaponics?
Okay, great question. We are working with the specific school called East High School in Kansas City. It's one of the largest schools in the Kansas City, Missouri Public School District. It's also one of the most diverse schools, which we boast over students from around the world. And it's not very common to be teaching in a class where you are the person that probably speaks the least amount of languages in the class. So we've got students that run from 5 to 6 different languages and dialects from around the world. That's what's so incredibly cool, because then we're reintroducing agriculture and sustainable agriculture from very well where these students' families or forefathers have come from in these countries. So that's a tremendous learning experience and connection point, like Wally was saying, growing food that's culturally relevant and that's culturally used is part of that knowledge and education of our community.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Oh, let me say this. And I do work with schools outside the community. It just depends on how we're able to do that. So yes.
Great. And are there any public policies that are difficult for aspiring food farmers, or are there any policies that are helpful and that you'd like to see implemented? And Bill, this is for you or for Wally?
Okay. Wally, I'll tackle some of this. In Missouri, our senator sponsored a bill. Senator Barbara Ann Washington sponsored a bill for urban farming tax credits for Missouri. And that tax credit would go to, it's Senate Bill 82, and I testified numerous occasions on why this is a great bill, because it supports people who support farmers in rural areas. And so you get a tax credit for donating to like an organization like Green Acres. And so that's still going through the Missouri House, but policy decisions like that, I think we can all become advocates for what we do and change food policy. We have to. It's not working.
I very much agree with that, Bill. I'm a member of the National Young Farmers Coalition, and kind of some of the policy tenets that we work towards around immigration, labor, healthcare, and land access. I would say my representative Congress is Jeff Fortenberry. He's a Republican. He's the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, very committed to local food, very committed to farm to school. Something that recently came through on that level for local food generally, not just for farmers, was that they helped with the language of what a school can source from a local farm. So kind of broadened that, made it a little less, as the question said, onerous, which I think is important. A small tweak can result in a lot less of a barrier for a school cook or chef to request food from a farmer, and for the farmer to fit the criteria that they need to get that $1.87 meal out the door. I would say policies that, that's maybe a helpful one. Ones that are onerous, I think the city of Omaha is currently going through some revisions of what urban ag policy looks like. They have a public comment period coming up in about a month. I would say open it, read it, ask questions of farmers that and advocate on their behalf to tweak language that gives them, just like less paperwork, that also incentivizes food safety, right? We all want to make sure that what's being produced is clean and healthy. But if it's going to take a couple permits and the cost of those permits and the time to show up at meetings, things don't then get followed through, and it might not be the system that's simple for anyone involved. So I think if there's not a farmer at the table, it's unlikely that policy was created in a way that's going to benefit someone. And I think a lot of times farmers are not at the tables that of the decision making for policy in this case.
I'm also a member of the National Black Farmers Association with John Boyd and the organization. And I agree with the advocacy, because if we don't start to advocate for better food policy, for better incentives, and for better cost savings and better health and nutritional benefits for students or communities that wanting to go food local, they should be incentivized to do that. They should be, say, hey, instead of, going to California, we will pay you to buy from local farmers here. And we will also support your programs if you want to educate children. I mean, that's how that policy can come together so quickly to change the landscape of food production.
Great, thank you. And speaking of this public policy, where would be a good, and while this may be best for you, because for the more local folks, but where's a good place to go for information on those types of policies that are being suggested or brought to as a potential new policy for local, or it sounds like for at the state level?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a good spot that it's being published. I think a lot of things, by the time public comment period comes around, if you're not in the know and you're not like dedicated to it, it like the period passes and you're like, oh, I wish I would have known, right? So I think it takes statewide organizations, national organizations, as well as local organizations to be active in following that. The Center for Rural Affairs here in Nebraska does a great job at that. Nebraska Appleseed is another, and Civic Nebraska does as well, to like just get the word out, make it easy for someone to find the information. Sometimes they have a summary about the effects of what the policy would do. So donating to those organizations, they might not be necessarily like, we work on food policy, but they're following what affects the health of the constituents in their region. And, you know, I heard about the Omaha to urban ag policy recently, and I'm like, well, that should be something that should be like, I would hope at some point in the near future that cities reach out to stakeholders and say, we want your input. I don't recognize that happening right now. The conversations are at meetings in the middle of the day, and by the time public comment period comes along, it's usually too far down the line to make a change that's significant. If the policy was being formed again with people at the table that it does affect, I feel that policy is much more impactful and supportive. So I think it takes electing people that want to engage community members from the beginning and not saying like, oh, what do you think? We're going to vote on this tomorrow. That just doesn't really fly in my book.
Okay, I've added some links to the Civic Nebraska that you mentioned, and then Nebraska Appleseed as well.
Okay. And I know this is all Omaha based, so I didn't want to throw up all the links that we have in Kansas City, Missouri. So if people want to just email me the links, we are also Missouri grown. We also work with a lot of the organizations. But back to Wally's point, if you are a farmer and if you do what we're doing, I would advocate 1 to 2 things that you should probably do. A, you should know who your Congress people are. B, they should know who you are, which means you should have an audience and talk about what you're doing in your community. If you show the advocacy on every level from, local, state, federal, and all the way up to, senators and things like that, you are becoming a part of a greater organization. And so you're not by yourself. So be encouraged, but reach out to these other organizations, because to Wally's point, if there's any type of food policy discussion, if you're connected with what's going on legislatively and policy, you'll get access to that before the public does. And so you can prepare advocacy groups, you can prepare statements, you can prepare any type of testimonials automatically. You don't have to wait to the hearing. And it'll be read there. I think you'll feel more better about the process if you're involved in it than sitting on the sidelines.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question for you all. So as we're looking at this local food systems, if the question is how can we grow our local food systems and getting this local food to people, can you talk to us a little bit about where those bottlenecks are? Like, do we need more local producers? Is it a distribution issue? Is it a market issue? Are folks not buying that? Like, where are some of the shortages and bottlenecks in the systems between producers and distributors and markets?
We could fill the rest of the time with this question, probably.
We sure can.
I would say something that I see on a daily level is reliable labor, that we can pay a living wage based on the price that we can get at market. If we could charge another 50 cents on things, we could, if people were willing to pay more for their food and pay for quality food that pays a living wage, we would see a healthier food system. I don't see the value currently, not to be pessimistic too harshly, but people aren't valuing what they're eating, and thus it doesn't matter what they eat in a lot of cases. And it's hard for a local farm to compete with what's being shipped in from California. there are farm workers and there are farmers in California that face the same situations that we do, just on a bigger scale. So if we're willing to pay more for something to be shipped in, should be also being willing to pay for more that comes from a neighboring farm. So I would say paying more for your food allows the farmer to pay a living wage to their team, and that will make farming a career and less of a hobby or a sec you have to have an off-farm job. Many farmers, over 50%. Some family member has to have an off-farm job for healthcare, for benefits, and for income. Today's age, many farmers cannot solely rely on farming income to support their family because of how cheap we've made food. And when I say food, how cheap are we've put into the commodity system. We trade food on the stock exchange. I don't believe that is the way to go in how we value our connection to food. Although that's what we deal with today. How do we fix that? We get to know our farmer, we get to know our producer, and we pay them for their work at a fair wage and a fair value for the work they put in. I would say one more bottleneck aside from labor and the price of food is, economies of scale do reduce the price of food. And if you can ship a semi of something, it's going to be cheaper than shipping a minivan of kale, right? So if we can start to create systems that are more cooperative based, where there are food hubs and there are food distributors that are owned by other farmers, I believe we can find efficiencies at a smaller scale, be competitive, and still pay a fair wage to them.
Okay. That's very good. Sally, I'm going to take it into a different context as far as where we are in the urban core, in the inner city, where we're battling with lack of good education, job opportunities, crime, more fast food places than liquor stores everywhere. There's no grocery stores. You got to drive 6 to 7 miles to go get a salad at a gas station. Okay, so that's the climate that we are coming from in the frame reference point. Now, what I would suggest is that what we talked about earlier in my introduction is about our biopark. Our biopark is built to be an opportunity for students in the community or outside the community, just students everywhere who want to come learn about sustainable agricultural practices and want careers in green jobs and green opportunities. The reason why we feel like this biopark would be so effective is because, to Wally's point, to change the capacity of a food system, you have to have the capacity. You have to have semis of fresh, organic, local food to really go in to change a school district or to change a hospital or to change, the way that people are consuming food in a community where there is a desert there. And so with that, we were able to look at what are the top 5 issues that we're facing in our community. And I believe a lot of those issues deal with opportunities such as education and employment. We want to give students a living wage. We want to point to pathways that are going to be successful for students coming from an inner city background. And we want to get them involved in the sciences, and we want to get them involved in the engineering, because why? We know that changes things. We know that those students are typically likely to come back to their communities and really put forth the work and the effort that they've received from their training. We already know it. And so that's what we're committed to breaking down some of those barriers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I believe that we have 1 or 2 more questions and 1 or 2 more minutes. So we're going to see what, let's see, we can get through. Is organic farming a requirement for urban farming? And how is that currently working? Or is, I'm not entirely sure here, but let's say, is it typical that urban farming is also organic farming? We'll go with that. Is it typical that it is, and is it a requirement for urban farming that it is organic?
Oh, okay. let's separate some of these words so we don't throw them around incorrectly. Organic is specifically speaking to the practice in which something is grown, okay, and using natural elements to produce that. Urban farming does not necessarily indicate that produce or that process is organic. That it has nothing to really do with urban farming. So to that question, you can put Miracle-Gro in your grow beds and produce vegetables and feed your community. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we want to talk about is sustainable agricultural practices, which if we all start lending to that thought process and then those actions, we're able to really combat things such as climate change. We're able to look at how we manage water runoff and how we manage pesticides and chemicals and what the impacts of those. So that's when people say, well, organic, well, yeah, organic reduces a lot of those types of things that going into our wastewater and into our bodies ultimately. So I'm not a prude about organic, but I just think that that's a pathway that we should really generally should pursue just for environmental reasons and health reasons.
Yeah, I would add that to become certified organic, a farm has to go through about a 3-year transition period.
Mhm.
Most urban soils are really difficult to grow in. Some people have to add above grade, above the current soil level if they're growing in soil, or aquaponically they'd have to kind of start from scratch. I think the more we can incentivize those transition periods, the easier that will be for a lot of people to come away from using Roundup and go over to using a certified product that isn't harmful, made by Bayer and Monsanto. And I think Bayer and Monsanto, if I can briefly say, are organizations that are realizing the poor health effects, the cancer that their products have been causing for decades. And they are coming around, and I want to encourage them to not demonize their past behavior, but encourage what can be done if we stop buying the products that we know cause harmful effects on our bodies. Organic, I think, has that potential. Regenerative, sustainable, whatever label you want to put on it, it's going in the direction away from a chemical-based, input-based farming system. So I think we can all stop spraying our lawns with Roundup to give a chance for a transition period so we can grow our own food on our urban lands safely.
Great, thank you both. I think we have about 30 seconds left, so I'll just ask really quick. We've talked so much today, and I think we've all learned a lot from both of you, and thank you again for being here. But if there's one thing you would like our attendees to take home with them tonight, what would that be?
If I can go real quick, 15-second version is your decisions matter. What you do, put in your body is important. And you don't have to feel bad about what you're doing today, and there's always room for improvement. And finding the support mechanisms with information, if that drives you, with communities, if that what encourages you. I think if we're knowing more, we can care a little bit more, and we can do a little bit better for our community. So I think we all have, the ability in us to make these changes, and it's okay if we're not there yet.
Thank you. And Bill?
My 15 seconds would be, first of all, thank you for listening. Second of all, get involved. You have no idea what your efforts or what your support brings to the table. As far as, particularly with farmers, we are out there, we're all in. There's no going back to the job or the office because we're so invested in the land and what we're doing and invested in our communities. Support us any way you can, whether it be an email, whether it be a donation, whether it be volunteers like Wally talked about, whether it be buying food from us, even if it's not even in your budget, because that's the challenge in the inner city, is that in communities of color, is that organic food is priced well beyond the budgets. And so we're trying to make that food affordable. So when you support us, you're supporting us buying seeds, plants, fish, trays, lab jackets, because we certify all of our students that go through our program with these types of credentials where they can go to where Wally is and work on his farm and then continue their education further. That's what we really want you guys to do, is just come on, let's get involved, do what you can do, because it makes a difference.
Great, thank you. Again,
Thank you.
Bill and Wally, thank you again. To our attendees, thank you for being here. We will work on sending out a survey and a list of resources if we have your emails, which I believe that we do. And feel free to share this recording once it's up with your colleagues, your friends, your family. It'll be on our mccneb.edu Hubbard website. We should have that up in a few weeks. So thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.